Welcome to Tea Time.
This is T,
Tommy Watt, and this is E.
Elijah, and welcome back.
Welcome back.
Episode. It's always something at the beginning of the episode when I cannot speak. Episode 6.
Episode 6. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we're back, and last week's episode went down a treat.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, I love how surprised we sound every time you say it's episode. Oh my gosh, it's episode 6.
But yeah, here we are, another week. I don't know where to begin, really.
First of all, we hope you enjoyed the previous episode.
Yeah, that's a good place to start.
If you haven't listened to the previous episode,
go and listen. Go and watch.
We really enjoyed it. It was just nice.
Yeah.
It was different from what we usually do because it was about us, but it gave us a chance to, I suppose, really reflect and share a bit more about ourselves and where we stand and like our journey, a little bit of our journey together so far.
And hopefully you've recovered from wherever you've been, whether it's been vomiting or crying.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it was a cheesy. It was a little bit of a cheesy episode. Oh my gosh.
But yeah, that's us. That's our first year together. And today's episode, as promised, we're gonna be looking at the power of prayer.
Yep.
So we've put together some things we want to talk about in light of that topic. And we're gonna go through our own testimonies in terms of our own experiences with prayer and relationship with prayer. But before we do that, we're going to start off with the Christian culture cards. So if anyone's been watching or listening, each week we start off with these cards. They're just a way for us to kind of get the ball rolling, really making sure that we're centered with God in mind. And so today is going to be from the interpretation pile because last week was from the icebreaker.
Yeah,
because it was so hot.
And so hot.
Yeah. And so T's going to give me a card. I'm going to pick it out. And then she's going to... Am I going to read that to you or are you going to read that to me? I can never remember this.
I think I read it.
Yeah. Okay.
Because you read it.
Yeah, I did. And terribly. In my defense, though, it was the wrong way around, but we flipped it over, so it looked as if I couldn't read.
But you could.
But I can read. I can read.
So...
Don't lie. Is it the grace card? Is it a grace card? You're kidding me.
I'm so done. No.
If that's
what
not confirmation,
to you?
If that's not confirmation, I don't know what is. And we're not making this up. Literally, just shuffled the cards.
I know.
For what? Yeah. That's the Holy Spirit.
What the heck?
Do
you know? I was literally like, "Oh, make sure you shuffle it on screen." I don't know. I was just like, "Oh, I need to make sure it's shuffled."
That's scary, but in a good way. Scary. I guess that's confirmation of what I need to preach on next.
What the heck? I'm actually in shock.
You know what's funny? Because I already started writing the sermon on what grace means to me. So to get that card after...
Cry. What the... That's so weird.
Because was it 2 episodes?
It was literally... Was it last week?
No, it was
Was it last week's one?
Yeah, it was last week's one.
I was like, I keep that's interesting. Because you said, the acronym. I was like, oh, it's an acronym. And obviously it was an acronym. No way. I'm actually getting hot.
Well, if you don't know what the card is already, it's what does grace mean to you?
What the heck?
Yeah.
No.
That's a bit mad.
Yeah, okay. I'm literally shook right now. I'm shook. I'm actually shook. I'm getting hot. Sorry, guys. Okay, Elijah.
What does grace mean to me? When I think of grace, I think of mercy.
Yeah.
And the ultimate sign of mercy or grace that I can think of is Jesus sacrificing himself to atone for our sins.
Yeah.
And so grace is receiving something when you should not have received it. It's like getting mercy when you should not have received mercy. And I actually spoke about this in a bit more depth on my Brother's Keepers podcast.
Plug.
plug. Go check them out. They're brotherhood who are really into speaking about the word and what it means, and from a perspective of brothers. And we spoke about grace and mercy, and I spoke about the ultimate sign of grace to me is Jesus' sacrifice on the cross. But yeah, for anyone who doesn't know the acronym that Tom was talking about, that I mentioned, is God's riches at Christ's expense. And I think it really just puts it in a nutshell. Like, we have the riches, we have this life that we, truth be told, don't deserve. But we've been given this life, we've been given this a second chance, if you want to call it that, because of the sacrifice that Jesus has made. And grace is kind of just, encapsulate being given something that you don't deserve. And so for it, we should make the most out of it where we can. But I don't want to keep going on about it. But that's how I see grace. It's just being given something that you don't deserve. And we should all learn from expressing grace to people, because there's some people out there that may get on your nerves, or do things that really get on your nerves, but you've got to express grace, because grace is a form of love. And as we looked at last week as well, love is really the tool that conquers all. Like, it's really powerful. But that's what grace means to me, if I was to explain it. I'm still trying to work it out for myself, even though I'm going to be preaching a sermon on it. I'm still trying to formulate what I really think grace is. But if I was just to think of it that way, that's how I would say it. What does it mean to you?
I'm still shook. To me, so I was actually trying to think, not to sound dim, I couldn't tell you what grace actually means. Like, as if someone said, what's the definition for grace? I'd actually I know probably how to use it in context, but I don't actually know the meaning of it. So the thing I was thinking about is, like, for a grace period, for example, when you start a job, you have a grace period, which is kind of
you're given time
to make mistakes, adjust, that type of thing.
That's true.
You can be graceful, and that's to do with your behavior. It's usually used mostly towards women, but I know people use grace in the Christian world.
It's also a name.
It's a name. But I don't know. So I would say I'm interested in hearing your sermon, but I don't. I'm going to put my hands up. I don't have a personal connection with the word grace. I know we're alive by the grace of, like, we're alive in the spirit through the grace of Jesus, that type of thing. So I guess for me, I'm going to be honest.
No, it's tough. No, the truth, like, because
I don't know what grace means to me.
Even before I started, I was like, what does it mean? And what does grace mean? Because, naturally, we're going to take it to, what does it mean in a spiritual sense? What does it mean? What does the word say? But I think it's one of those words that is quite convoluted, and certain words that we use in our context of, like if we're talking about worldly context, it doesn't align to how it's said in the word. Even a word like good, for example. We use the word good for everything. How was your day? Good. How's the food? Good. And it was something I was looking at when I was in my Bible study in terms of what does the word good mean. And it's supposed to be an expression much more than what we use it for on a day-to-day basis.
But it's like watered down.
Yeah, it's watered down, because even in the beginning, God said it was good.
Yeah.
That word has so much power, and I think grace is one of those words as well. But I completely understand where you're coming from in terms of when you actually try and dissect what does grace mean. I think there's no problem in trying to contextualize it, because I think it's one of those words that it is difficult to put a definition to. I mean,
there is a definition.
There's a definition, but it's...
In terms of Christianity, for me, I suppose I just had the thing, like when you refer to people with titles, but your grace.
Yeah.
Like, why are they called that? Like, I think I've just had a realization. I don't have a concept of the word grace.
But we'd be intrigued to know, what do you think grace is?
Yeah.
And it doesn't
Without
have to be...
looking in the dictionary.
Yeah, of course. It doesn't have to be in a Christian sense. So what does the word grace mean to you? Because, like, even though I'm trying to wrap my head around it, it's still something that I'm still trying to figure out. What does it mean? What does grace mean to me? How's it expressed in my own life? Because as you've just pointed out, there's so many different ways in which grace is shown. Or
And it's not everyday language. Like, I can't remember the
No.
last time I used grace in a
Grace.
sentence or conversation, that
Yeah.
type of thing. So for me, if I was going to try and answer the question the best way I could, the closest connection that I can understand, then connecting it with Christianity, is a grace period. A grace period is that you have an allowance. You're kind of
Allowance.
you've it's what's my mind's just gone there. An allowance period where it's kind of like you're not allowed to make mistakes, but it's kind of like you're allowed to make mistakes, and it's not held against you.
There you have it.
That's what grace means to me. I've been allowed to make mistakes, but it's not been held against me, and that's what I mean. It is if I didn't repent in the grand scheme of things. But I suppose that's what it is. That's the closest connection I can have, is that, you know, I make mistakes every day. I'm part of, in the Christian sense, a race who born sinners.
Yeah.
But through Christ, I've been given grace to make those mistakes and still have access to the kingdom, the glory, that relationship. Like, it's not, despite the mistakes, it's not held against me, because I'm under his grace. I'm in his grace. I'm covered by the grace of God.
There we go. And just so that we
it just makes sense now. Oh my gosh, I understand it. This is why it's so good to talk things out, honestly, because when I actually panicked a bit after the initial shook of moment, I then was like, wait, actually, how am I going to answer this? But because I don't think about it really, to be fair.
That's grace, isn't it? Grace. And speaking about grace, because we've actually forgotten to do an important thing at the beginning of our episode, which is grab yourself a tea.
Speaking of grace, have grace on us.
Have grace on us. Have mercy.
We're both actually drinking tea today.
Yeah, and it's moringa tea. Moringa with ginger, because moringa by itself just tastes like farts. And I mean it with all seriousness.
What? I was really tired the other day. So Elijah and I buy the moringa with ginger. My mum bought moringa some time ago, which is what put us onto moringa, like tea. And so we've got two in the cupboard, one with ginger, one without ginger. I think I was tired the other day, and I think I accidentally took the one without ginger. And I was sat in the front room, just I've had a couple of days off. I'm just literally chilling, and I was drinking this tea, and I really was like, something's wrong. Something's really wrong. I was just sipping it like, what is this? Did I forget to put sugar in it? Like, it was awful.
Yeah, moringa by itself, it's not a pleasant smell or taste.
Oh no! Like, I get it's got health benefits.
Ginger, that really
ginger is just a great ingredient. Ginger makes everything better.
It's true.
It really does. Well, you can put it in cake. You can put it in curry. You can probably put it in rice. You can put it in cheesecake. So you can put it in cheese.
Yeah.
You can put it in drinks. You can actually put it in everything.
Yeah, it's medicinal. It's good. Yeah.
Soup.
Soup.
Could probably put it in a casserole. Probably wouldn't taste great in a savoury pie. Depending what savoury pie you're eating. Like, if you're eating like a chickpea curry kind of pasty. Sorry, I was like processing what I was trying to say next. Anyway, moringa tea.
Moringa tea, but yeah.
We researched the health benefits of it. I can't remember.
I don't remember.
There are health benefits.
But it's good. It's good for you. Yeah. As is a lot of herbal sort of teas. I was gonna say we should probably post on our thing the tea of the week. Yeah.
Ooh, did you like
tea
that?
Of the week.
I didn't even clock how good that was. Oh my gosh. That was good.
That's a great idea. But yeah, grab yourself a tea. Today we're gonna be speaking about the power of prayer. What Thomas just said.
Sorry, just deeping my ingenious.
But today's tea of the week is the moringa tea, moringa with ginger, and we'll put it there so you can see which one we're talking about. But yeah, we're going to be talking about the power of prayer today, and we're in a nice serene location. We're just in a park. It's very quiet today, which is nice, because last week we were basically by it must have been a B road, I think. Yeah, because of the motorbikes and stuff. But yeah, we got a nice peaceful place, which is fitting because of the topic, which is the power of prayer. So yeah, we're going to speak about what's come to mind for us in terms of what prayer is, why you should pray, what you should do if you're struggling. We're going to give our own testimonies about how we've dealt with, I guess, periods where we may not have prayed, or when we've prayed, we've seen the power of prayer firsthand. But it's a really important topic for Christians, really. But for those who are not Christian, I'd say just listen to what we have to say in terms of why we pray. And if there are any questions, or if you've got any queries or anything at all that you want to throw at us, we do have a Q&A section on Spotify, or just drop something on YouTube, or Instagram, because we are, as we said, we're open. We want to hear what your thoughts are, and we've got some good feedback from some friends as well, including one.
Some confirmation actually, and it was so weird. So we recorded last Thursday. It's now Friday. We recorded the last episode that's available at this current moment, which will be in addition to this episode when you guys hear it. But as of Friday, what's the date today? Friday the 18th of August. So we've only got one episode out before this one.
Yep.
I'm really confusing what I'm trying to say.
After that Grace card came out, you were
I literally think my brain's
flustered.
What I'm trying to say is, so the episode before this one hadn't been released yet when I met up with a friend. Okay, we got there. And we were talking, so she's such a big, I've been friends with her for, I was calculating it this morning, 16 years,
she's practically a sister.
Or coming up to 16 years. She is. She's my twin.
Yeah.
Like, she is my sister.
Literally,
So she listens to the episodes. She gives us, she posts them. I just love her to pieces. And she's just a big... I'm going to start crying in a second. Love you, Lizzie. Shout out to Lizzie. She's a real one. And I didn't tell her this. I was... Okay, full confessional moment. I was a bit... under the influence, because Christians can get drunk too, but shouldn't.
I was gonna put my 2 pence in there,
but they shouldn't. But hey, I don't know. Not that they shouldn't. They shouldn't lose control.
I don't know what.
We don't
is
know.
Is it mutually exclusive, the two?
I can get tipsy.
Yeah, because I know it says obviously don't get drunk.
Don't be a drunkard.
Don't be a drunkard.
Yeah, I'm not a drunkard.
Yeah, don't be like Noah.
Don't be like Noah. Don't get to know yourself. If you don't know, get to know. But anyway, so I was out with my friends. And it's so funny. This is a conversation we're having anyway. But so she was telling me, she was like, keep it up. You guys need to be consistent. It's really good. I was like, oh, thank you. And she was like, I think you should do a section on prayer at the end, or you should say a prayer at the end of your episodes. And I think I was too kind of to be really verbalize what was going through my mind. I think I just looked at her like this for a second, okay, because what I was thinking was, oh my gosh, in the last episode we literally said we're going to do an episode on prayer. And I just thought it was so, because sorry Lizzie, correct me if I'm wrong, but she comes from no, I do know this, she comes from a Catholic background, but we don't really talk about our religions often. You're just it's not something you talk about all the time with your friends, unless maybe you're in church with someone. So in the past we've talked on and off about it, obviously Christian background, Catholic background, the same but different. So for me it was just completely almost out of the blue that she would actually speak about prayer, because I don't think I've spoken about prayer or religion properly for a while with Lizzie. And number one, I was so kind of happy that she felt comfortable coming to me and say yeah, you should pray, because outside of church I don't really talk to people about prayer generally anyway. That may genuinely be the first... Sorry,
is it a fly?
Yeah, it was.
It's not a fool.
Wow.
Yeah, as you said.
That was good, that joke.
I'm practicing.
What?
When I said that, I don't know why I said that.
That wasn't an announcement, by the way. That wasn't it.
Not that we know of.
Oh my gosh, I'm getting so high.
Yeah, this is really warm.
What I'm trying to say is that it was confirmation for us, and I think there's just like, if you're keeping up with these episodes, I hope you're seeing firsthand what we mean by there's no. From our very first episode, we were saying like God works. The fact that she said that, not knowing that we had spoken about prayer for the upcoming episode, and encouraged me, to be like, yeah, you should pray at the end of your episodes after we'd mentioned, like, it was just like for me. I was just like, yeah, God, I feel like God's in favor of this. We just need to keep it on the right track.
Yeah.
That grace thing, in addition to it, like, again, if you watch last week's episode, you know, Elijah made a point of like, oh, that's so weird because and you saw me just shuffle the cards, and you saw me just show it like, yeah, pick one. Like, nah. Yeah, beat that, guys. Don't take what you're seeing lightly. For real. There's no such thing as a coincidence. Unless it is.
And then if it is, then I don't know. But hey.
But yeah, so we're gonna, that was just, I needed to share that because for me that was confirmation that, we definitely should talk about prayer. Maybe there's someone who's watching it who needs to hear about prayer from our perspective, and hopefully that perspective is God's perspective. We are only human, so we may have our own interpretations that might not be right, but we will never say it with the intention of conflating what God intends.
And speaking about God's intentions, like, it states so clearly in the Bible that we should pray. And prayer it's kind of like, it's like a weapon in some sense, because it's what you use to declare or make a declaration for something. And so prayer is that way in which you communicate with God and you express maybe what you need, what you want, whether that be, I don't know, strength, guidance, clarification, discernment. It's just, truth be told, it's a way of life. That's obviously how I see it from the lens of being a Christian. It's a way of life, and I couldn't live without prayer. And I know for those that are listening, you're probably thinking, oh, well, prayer is just something that you kind of just do maybe at the beginning or the end of the day, or like in times of need. But it says in the Bible, and I can't remember the verse, but it says in everything you should pray. And if I'm honest, I wasn't always that way. I didn't always pray. You know, I know anyone listening is probably thinking, like, when they first started praying, it's awkward. Like, especially when you're praying out loud, it can be awkward because in your head it's like, I'm praying, but is anyone listening? When God is listening to your prayers, but to someone just watching you, like, you're just praying.
I just someone just in the closet.
You're just praying, and it's like, is this person? Are they okay in their head? But yeah, prayer is, it's one of those things. It can be quite daunting. But yeah, we just want to kind of break down why it's important to pray, and like I said, just go for our own testimonies, and overcoming that fear of prayer. But yeah, I don't know how we want to start this. We want to start with our testimonies, or do we want to kind of? Yeah, I feel like it will.
Okay. Who wants to go first?
I feel as I'll start with my testimony. So yeah, in terms of, I kind of given a snippet. In terms of prayer, I wasn't always big on prayer. I used to find it strange, used to find it awkward, especially when you be up in the church and they're like, bow your head and pray. I'm the guy that's like looking around like, are we still praying? Which I know, like, now I'm in a position I am, it's like, oh, that's not a good thing to do. But prayer is very much, it's always been something that I found very strange to do, because if anyone doesn't know, like, I grew up as a Catholic, and then I went.
Got Catholics all around.
Yeah, I grew up as a Catholic. Went to Wednesday Mass. We do the up down, sing hymns, sit back down, check your knees are still okay, get back up, sing, pray, and it's just, when I was at that age, I didn't understand why you pray. And then I came into a point where I would pray, but only pray when I was in time of need. Like, oh God, like, please, like, make sure those sweets are in the shop when I get there, or please help me make sure that I did well on my exams. It's very much like
So you connected prayer with like you always had a request, like
Always
you
had a
needed it,
request.
It wasn't, yeah.
Never a case of I'm gonna pray just to exalt His name and just be like, thank you for what I have. It was always oh my God, I'm in the trenches. I need help.
Yeah.
Get me out of this.
As a kid who doesn't have the fizzy sweets available there, yeah. But
Get me out of
good.
this. And it was only until recently, and I'll say thanks to my relationship with Tomo and connecting with the church properly as an adult, I began to really understand what prayer means and why prayer is a way of life, as I said. And there's one particular story that I'll speak on, because I could speak about prayer probably for an hour and a bit. But there's one particular story that stood out to me because it was a prayer that I must have made, or at least in some way expressed to God. But the timing in which this prayer was answered was like months in advance, right? Like months later. So anyone that come out of uni and hasn't secured that postgrad job, struggle. And so I was in a period of, I guess, financial struggle for about, what would we say, a year or two.
So you came out of uni, you got into a job. But it wasn't, and then lockdown happened. Oh my gosh, gosh. So it was maybe 1 year, then you moved out. So maybe a year and a bit, 2 years after uni.
A year and a bit. So I was working as a learning assistant at City Bristol College. Then COVID happened, so we all kind of transferred to working from home. And at that point, I was living in Bristol, and I was paying like crazy amount of rent and also council tax, which was just depleting my funds. And in my head I was like, I keep getting like, I'm spending too much, like as in they're taking too much of my money. I don't have that much money to be given to them for council tax. But they were just saying that's the right amount. And it had a knock-on effect, because when I went to London and I finally quit that job, I basically didn't have a job. So there was a period for a few months where I was out of a job. I was literally surviving off of the little money I had, plus the overdraft, which was depleting at a rapid rate. And Tom would like give me a bit of money each month just to hold me over. So there was a period literally I was just out of a job, and quite frankly, like really down, really sad, because I was like, I'm trying, like I need something, and my money is like, it's running out real quick. And then there was one day I come home and I get a letter, and I get a letter from tax return. And anyone who has ever received a letter from tax return, you're just like, woohoo! It's just like, it's that moment you just think, oh my God, yeah, I'm gonna get some money back. And it didn't even crossed my mind at that moment. I was just like, oh, it's tax return. Like, I didn't think it was anything huge. So I open it up. I know whatever lie, I was like, we're basically backdating how much we've taken from you because of tax, all the way back to when I was working at City of Bristol College.
Because you'd had a job after that as well.
Yeah, I had a job after that, working for Victor Support, but then I left that role because I was due to move back to Bristol. And then, so they counted all of that up together, and I'm like, yeah, we're giving you about next to $1,000 worth of tax return. And to me, it was just like wow, like my whole head was gone, like frazzled, because I was like, God, like you literally work in mysterious ways. There's no way. I wasn't even expecting that, because I wasn't even thinking about tax return, because even with tax return you only get what, maybe like
a few hundred,
if that.
But it was literally, if you rounded up, it was basically $1,000. And it's like for two jobs worth of
2 jobs worth of tax.
It's like, I mean, no, tax returns aren't a regular thing. It's like, I can't remember the last, I wish I'd get a tax return, do you know what I mean? And for you to be... The government
do not make mistakes like that often, you know? So, yeah. And that, for me, that was one of those times where you look at how sometimes when you pray for something, it doesn't always happen as you want it to happen, or happen straight away. It happens in a way in which God's like, all I could think of, and it's something that I go back to, is that tapestry. Like God is working away on a tapestry, and you've been given the back of that tapestry, and you're just seeing the mess. But then when you turn it over, you see an image. That was a real like, oh, I've seen the image moment, because I was like, wow, like God could have given me that money months beforehand, right?
When you were still in a job.
When I was still in a job, and I would have splashed that. I would have splashed that on trainers and garms and food and all of that stuff that, truth be told, I don't need. But he saw me in my need when I really needed it, and I was like, here, take this, my son. And I was just like, wow, incredible how prayer, sometimes it doesn't always come to fruition as you think it's going to, because God has a plan beyond what you see in your present. And yeah, that to me just again, confirmation that prayer is a way of life. Like if you continue to pray, and as it says in the Bible, if you keep knocking, the door will be answered. Like you will receive if you ask for it. You may not receive as you think you're going to receive it, but you will receive, because God is a good God, and He always has your best intentions at heart, and beyond your present, looking at your future, because He doesn't work in this time and space. He's beyond that. He's transcendent. So for me, that was my, I guess, one of many testimonies I could talk about in terms of prayer.
A huge one.
But yeah, that real blew my mind.
And it really held you over as well, because it wasn't too long after that you then, look at that smile.
Then got into the job that I'm in now. And that's another job that I prayed for as well. And we spoke about this, how I was praying, like, God, give me a work from home job that's giving me good bucks. Because I was truthfully in that period where I got a taste of working from home because of COVID, and I was like, oh, I like that. I like that. And now here I am, like, I've got a job working from home with the same company actually, and paying me good money as well. And it's just like I couldn't ask, like I literally asked for it, and God was like, I'm gonna give it to you, but in my time again. So I went through that moment of struggle, came out the end of it, not only with a tax return, but also with a job. So it's just like working in His own way to give me more than I maybe even asked for, rolled into one. But yeah, that's just my testimony on that.
I love that testimony.
Yeah.
And also, because I remember we were talking about it earlier in terms of how as a Christian, so being a Christian or becoming a Christian doesn't mean that you won't face difficult times. People think like, oh, you just pray for everything. It's not that. It's to make our life easier. Hardships are just a factor of, you're human, you're going to face trials. It just comes with being alive. The point of being Christian is that you have something beyond you to depend on. Is that thing. And I think for me, when I was there with Elijah as he was going through the struggle, there was only so much I can do. So although he says I was contributing a bit each month to support him, it's a case of like, I only had so much as well, like that type of thing. So we were kind of, even before we were married, we were in it together type of thing. And it's that thing of, God would have known in advance that you were going to go through that trial, I was going to go through that trial. And the fact that, like, it could have been a case, like, if you didn't get a tax, like, there would have been no way you would have looked at your thing each month and be like, oh, they're going to have to give me a tax return, something's missing. Like, that wasn't crossing our minds at all. And I honestly think God was moving in a way to make sure, like, okay, a bit of money from each of these paychecks is going to be set aside for when Elijah goes through that tough time, which he's going to have to go through for whatever reason. But I will be there to support him, because, and honestly, this is, we'll get into it, but I think this leads into what the power of prayer is in terms of it activates something, because I generally easily, it could, and I'm going to give glory to God in this situation, I think easily it could have been a case that actually that was just, either they would have just paid you each month and you wouldn't have thought any differently, like you would have used the money as you would have, or like that tax, that basically that tax return could have not come because that problem wouldn't have been a thing, therefore you wouldn't have anything coming to you when you did actually need it. I genuinely think that God saw your heart and that was activated. Do you know what I mean? And just like you said, God doesn't work in our timeline, so you could think like, oh, but what if Elijah didn't pray that prayer? God knew you were going to pray the prayer.
Yeah, literally.
You know? And it's just like, oh yeah, there's just so much to it. I think you really activated something in having your heart set on God, and like you said, literally, prayer is a weapon, and I think you activated that weapon, which helped guide you, shield you, essentially, from that moment. But yeah, that's testimony.
Yeah, God is good, man.
God is good all the time.
All the time.
God is good.
But yeah, that's, like I said, I got a fair few, but for the purpose of, like, just where we are.
Maybe another time.
Maybe another time. But yeah, what's
your mind? No. I'm trying to think. I feel like because prayer's been part of my life all my life. Like, you know, sometimes you struggle to remember all the things.
Of course, yeah.
God has done. Mine is going to be a little different.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a period when, you'd know, when I was doing my masters, I was down bad. Like, I was not in a good headspace. To the point, I think I'd said to you, like, I'm happy to stay my retail job. I'm like, do you remember? Like, I can't, like, I lost all hope. Nothing against it's nothing against retail jobs. It was not my calling at all. Like, there's no way I'd be happy because it's not who I am. Like, I think there are people in retail who is like, that's their passion because that's where their heart is set, and that's the same way. Like, you could be miserable working in my job and I would understand because that's not where your calling is. So I was just set, and it didn't make any sense because even at the level that I was on, I wasn't the happiest there anyway. So I don't know why being the manager of someone in that position would have brought me any sort of joy. But I was just like down bad, headspace bad, like everything. And then I don't know what happened. I just was like, gee, actually, I realised that I was really, really not happy. So I started applying for jobs. And I think I sent out like a few job applications. And then it came down to, there were like 3 interviews that I went to, not too far after one another, essentially. One of them I might get into another time, but that did come. It didn't come to anything. Actually, no, I will, because it's actually a full circle moment. Right. So the first job interview I went to, so my surname is my maiden surname, which is part of my married surname now, is of Danish origin. And I remember when I was really young and immature, like, people would, like, your friends would make, oh, like, your spelling is obviously, if you understand anything about history, you'd work out why I've probably got a Danish surname as a Nigerian woman. So I'll leave you guys to put 2 and 2 together. But I go up to this job interview, and the first thing the kind of main person said to me, she looks up at me, she looks back down at my CV, she looks up again, and she goes, oh. And I was just like, there's a T before that, and then M, then WA. She literally goes, oh. And I knew straight away, just because it is my reality, I knew straight away that O in translation was, I wasn't expecting you to be a black woman. That is what that O meant, because I've never in my life walked into a room, someone look at me, look back down at the paper with my name on it, look back up and gone, oh. And no one addressed it. I just looked at her, she looked at me, we just carried on with it. But I think that was my first big red flag of like, do I want to work somewhere where the surprise of a black woman walks in? I just realised maybe she didn't expect someone with like this history, qualification, everything to be a black woman as well.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was the sheer shock of it.
So that was that. So that was my first one. Then I didn't get it. I cried. Elijah was like,
consoling you, just letting you know that it wasn't meant for you. And you wouldn't want to work in a place like that anyway.
And then I emailed them for feedback, like, oh, what was it that was the problem, like, in obviously professional manner. And they were like, oh, you didn't, like, although you were generally good in one of the tasks, you kind of used the same approach for like 2 different things. I was like, that's fair enough. However, the role was for a trainee, which means you're meant to train me up to make sure I get it right. Like, do you know what I mean? So I was like, fair enough. And this advert was out for time. They didn't fill it. And then eventually I was like, okay, cool. Moved on to the next one. Did really well. Now, this is the one that I prayed hard for. So I told my mum, I've got one interview with this place, another interview with the other place. Let's call it, I don't know, because I don't want to give too much detail away. But let's say A and B. So I was praying for A, mum was praying for B. Really, the job interview for A, absolutely loved it. I was just like, oh my gosh, I get on well with every single one of these interviews. It was near to where Elijah was living at the time, and I was spending a lot of time around Elijah, so I was like, oh my gosh, I could just stay around with yours and like go there, or like if I go to work, I could just come see you straight after. Like, I was thinking of all this stuff type of thing. Like, I was really in love. Oh my god.
Whipped.
Literally. So I was like, oh, and like just the whole what the space was and everything like that. I was like, yeah, love it. Then I went to the interview for B. It was interesting. I listened to one of my favorite kind of gospel songs before going in. Was really nervous. Oh no, actually before that I got rejected from A.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, they emailed me. So they sent the general kind of denial,
Yeah.
like, oh sorry,
you've
not got it. The rejection letter. But then they sent a follow-up saying, we just wanted to say, because I knew I had a good interview, you couldn't have told me otherwise. They're like, we just wanted to say you I know this made me feel worse though. I was second. I would have been the second if the person who got the job declined it. They would have offered it to me, basically. And they were like, you were so good, you had so much, but it was just like something like this person had like just that much more experience type of thing, which I was like, fair enough, because I was literally still doing my masters when I was applying for all these interviews. They literally, I think they still wanted to work with me under a capacity of what I was studying for, and I was like, yeah, I'll be down for that. I don't think I really followed up though. Again, I cried. Elijah was consoling me because I'm literally like, oh my gosh, like there's nothing out there for me. So then by the time I went to the interview for B, which was my third interview, I'm already dejected. Like, honestly, you think my resilience is so low? Like, some people doing interviews for like months, if not like a year. So third interview, I'm just like, oh, like I completely gave up. I had my natural afro out. I was like, I wasn't trying to wear a wig. The other ones had been wearing wigs. I dressed in like in the most kind of Eurocentric way I possibly could. Like, you know, maybe they won't notice. I was like, I'm having my afro out. I don't even business. Like, I'm just gonna be like whatever. So I go for this interview for B. I wasn't really like, I didn't really want to work there, if I'm honest with you. It was just kind of like, it's a job, it's in the line of work that I've kind of studied in and everything, and not anything against, because I'm still there now, thankfully, but I just was like, oh, this is like, I was over it, basically.
You were.
Did an interview. I was pretty certain it didn't go well because I was so nervous. The person who ended up being my manager, she's a really kind of stern interviewer. So I thought she didn't go well. There was another person there, so he was also quite like a stern interviewer. So I'm just saying, if you spend like 5 minutes with me, I'm quite joking. Like, I try and slip a joke in at any given moment, just to like no. Honestly, I think one of my answers was like, what was one of your weaknesses? And I was like, I'm kind of clumsy. Guys,
then they were probably like,
okay, keep away from. So, and there was one other interview who was really friendly, so she was the person I was like, and you know who that is. Yeah, she was a good cop. I had 2 bad cops, 1 good cop. No, they're all really lovely, to be fair, but like, obviously it's an interview. So I come out of it just like,
boy,
do you know what's interesting? I think I messaged my friends though, saying like, I just had this interview. I think that's the only one I came out of and told my friends about, really.
Okay.
Because I remember it so specifically. I walked to a bus stop. There was a bit of drama going on. I was sat on the bus stop, so I was like, oh, I'm going to tell my friends, guys, like, just think of me, I'll pray for me or whatever. Like, yeah, that's the only one I actually was like, yeah, I've just had this interview. And so I was like, yeah, I just moved on from it. And then some time went. I was working in retail, as I said at the time. It was during the summer holidays. Some time went by. I was just like, oh, I haven't got the job, so I just carried on. I think I was continuing looking for jobs, whatever. And it was one day, I remember it so well, I'd finished a shift at work. I'd moseyed around a little bit, just like, after work, I had nothing, I had no direction in my life, guys, didn't know what else to do, just might as well look at other jobs. And then I'm walking towards my car. No, I was in the I got a missed call. From someone. And I was like, oh, who was that? I think I tried calling back. I remember now, it's all coming back to me. I think I tried calling back and it was the place that I'd interviewed for. I was just like, oh my gosh. And this is how down bad I was. Like, this is how bad my mental state was. I was like, are they calling me to reject me? Why would they do that?
I just wanted to let you know personally That was an awful interview.
No.
And don't you ever think you got that job, because you didn't. Could you imagine? You know how that bad mind you have to be to call up people.
No, in all honesty, because it honestly felt like it'd been so long. I thought, oh, maybe the emails haven't come out, so you're having to call people around to let them know that the job is being filled or something.
Like an automated.
This is how negative my mind was, for real. So I was just like walking, and then I got a call from the person who was the manager, who, like, honestly, after that interview, she was actually really lovely woman. And she was like, yeah, just want to see, like, have you taken on any jobs? Are you still available, whatever? I was just like, yeah, no, I haven't. But okay, good, because we want to offer you the job type of thing. I was just like in the car park of this like shopping centre, like
doing a little dance.
So go home, I tell my mum, and I'm like, Mum, you'll never guess what I think I must have told you first.
Yeah,
I told you first. You're actually like, yeah. It was me. But then I told my mum.
Yeah, you told your mum. And then what did your mum say?
She's like, oh, so, like, obviously my mum was over me. She's so happy. And then she was like, I was praying you'd get a job at this place and not the other place. And I was just like, swear.
So you're the reason why I didn't.
And she was just like, I can't remember her reasoning now, but she was like, it's closer to home. I can't remember the reasons. There were reasons, but she was like, yeah, I was praying you'd go at B rather than A. I was like, oh, I was praying for A. And in hindsight, my reasonings probably weren't the best anyway. It did revolve around Elijah. And a bit of just kind of like, it would have been a cool place to work. But like, I didn't really have any substantial reason to work there. It just seemed cooler, to be honest. Fast forward, and there is like, if anyone who comes from like generational Christian families, you understand the prayers of mothers and grandmothers. Like, this is always a thing in these in houses.
There's strength in those prayers.
Literally, because they've got so much more wisdom. And but yeah, so fast forward now. The first full, which is why we ended up telling the thing about that first interview I had. So the first full circle moment is when she's from my work, I think.
Oh, really?
That's so weird. The first full circle moment was when which one would I go for? Actually, I'm going to say the second part then, actually. So since getting to B, I have progressed in a way that doesn't make sense. People would be like,
how?
Oh no, people in the work were like, oh no, you've deserved it, you've earned it. Not say I've got imposter syndrome, but it's not normal.
It's not normal.
It really isn't normal. I got a promotion less than 2 years being in that job role.
Yep. And then
because of maternity, it was like a maternity cover thing.
Yeah.
Word of mouth got around that I had a specific qualification. I'm like, oh, okay, Tomo, go for this job. Like, got it. Like, I had to do the interview, everything, that type of thing. Like, it was just like Then same salary, but kind of almost stepped down. But still doing a job that I was really qualified for.
Yeah.
And then something happened. So, as I've been saying, I cried after every rejection from interviews. We all know by now I'm a crier. This job opportunity came up and I went for it. I wasn't passionate about it. I went for it because it was available and I was like encouraged to go for it. I was like, okay, I don't know if I really want to go for it. It kind of was,
I thought about that.
it was open for a long time. And eventually I went through it and I was just like, I don't know how I feel. Like, I prayed to God, I spoke to Elijah about it, and I really spoke with you about it. I prayed about it and I was like, honestly, I think I prayed, God, if this job isn't for me, don't let me have it. Like, I'm like, I don't want it. And it was a big job, but I was like, I'll go for it. And went for the interview eventually, got told I didn't get it, and I was just like, it was the first interview I didn't cry about because I was like, I'm fine with this rejection. Number one, it's God's plan. Number two, I obviously didn't actually really want it. It would have been a huge pay increase, but I wasn't. I was like, we were going through a phase of like, we really do need extra money, and that was more the motivating factor of like going for it. And again, it was a case of like, I think I was second, but the person who went for it, the person who got it, if it was a thing that people could do. It's almost like it made so much sense that she got it, that they almost didn't even need to do interviews. They didn't have to advertise. Like, it's so obvious you should have got it. Like qualifications, the years of experience, that type of thing. But so the fact that I even went up against her is wild. But fair opportunity. We love a workplace that does fair opportunities. But yeah, so it made sense. And then I was like, okay, we really need the money. It would be nice to have a promotion, that type of thing. But like, God will make a way where there seems to be no way. This would have been around...
That's when you were in your old place. I mean, your other place.
I can't... It would have been the autumn term-ish.
Yeah.
Guys, I kid you not more than half a year later, my manager moves job roles, opening up another promotion for me, which I obviously applied for, in a job role that I actually had experience in, had qualifications in, all of that. And that's the job role I ended up getting. So in less than 4 years of being in this place, I've just kept, like, these doors have just randomly opened for me at just the right time. And I honestly have to be so thankful that I've got a praying mother who prayed for the right place for me to go to, not the wrong place. So I've had all these promotions, which, like, just number one, like, I can't understand why I've had this many promotions in such a short period of time. But then during this phase of promotions, there was this organization that came to us to discuss collaborating, like, oh, they want to work with us, this type of thing. So we're talking, it was like a video interview, and we're talking to them, and I'm like, oh, like, this is one of the organizations I'd interviewed for, and I'd told my manager at the time, like, yeah, these are the ones who, like, this organization, when I went for them, it was like, oh, when they saw my name, so that's wild. So we're in the middle of this meeting. I was just talking normally, and there's one time I really looked at the faces. Guys, I kid you not. The two women who interviewed me, and specifically the one who said, oh, in my face, were the two people on the screen that were coming to us
for help,
for support, in terms of, like, oh, like, can we do this together? Like, you can send some of your students this way. We can do that type of thing. Like, we hadn't come to them, they'd come to us. And I literally had a moment, I imagine you in a meeting, and I think I just went, like, my eyes widened. Like, I was like, oh my goodness, is this happening? And I was just like, so I had this little smug moment of, like, wow,
you rejected me, and
wow, look where I am now. No, so it was like a huge full circle moment. And we ended the call, and I told my managers, like, those are the people I told you about, like, who major red flag. And on top of that, a few months after I'd actually interviewed for them, there was this huge announcement in this sector of, like, that these areas were getting shut down anyway, so they were reducing the amount of people that they were hiring, they were reducing the amount of centres, they were going, obviously people were going to be made redundant. So I was just like, wow.
You avoided all of that. And this comes back to, number one, there's no such thing as a coincidence. Because for all of those factors to happen, you can't tell me otherwise. But also just a huge power in prayer. And even the job where I'm in now, it's like, it's mine, it's not a cover, it's nothing. And we prayed to God. Like, this is why I'm always like, the first thing we do when something like this happens, we have to thank God. Because we'd been praying for breakthrough, we've been praying for relief, we've been praying for that kind of help and support and, you know, a chance. So for me, that was just like a concession. Like, all these prayers somehow interlinked are coming together to make one big boy. So yeah, stirring up fire. Like, I know it's gonna taste good. Just gotta wait.
Oh my gosh.
It's that exercise in patience. And you even prayed a prayer for patience, which
I pray to God, because I wouldn't say I'm the most naturally patient person, but I have prayed to God for patience in the past. And someone made a point, like, when you ask, it was Morgan Freeman in in Evan Almighty. Great movie. Oh my gosh. But it's like, when you ask God for patience, he's not just going to give you patience, he's going to give you a circumstance or a situation in which you need to exercise patience. So part of me kind of regretted for praying for patience. So no, but it was like, it's so true. Like, and I think another thing prayer does is it really forces you to realize that you do need to depend on God, and it's okay to depend on God, and ultimately all things work together for good for those who love God. Like, if you give your needs, your wants, everything to God, He'll pull through for you. Absolutely. So I just want to share my testimony. Like, I 100% believe that all the things that I've happened in terms of my career progression are down to God, because honestly, guys, I'm one of these people, I do work hard, but in a way that is kind of like, I know I could definitely work a lot harder. Like, if I like breaking my back type of thing, like I've got a lot of space, like I absolutely get the job done, but I feel like I don't work in a way that makes me noticeable for me personally, because I literally go to work, I kind of keep my head down, I'm literally like in an office by myself most times. So I think that's why I think God's moved on my behalf. Like, the fact that someone heard that I did this course which has a certain qualification. I'd never told this person this. Some of my team, and the person who heard this heard it from someone who heard it from someone else.
Word of mouth. And
it's like God's, and there's a saying, God will put your name in the mouths of people that you don't know about. I to this day don't know who really told her all this information or why they were spreading this around, because it's kind of like it had nothing to do with anything. So yeah, I 100% believe God moved on my behalf.
Of course.
Yeah.
100%. Because even with those rejections, the door wasn't closed.
Yeah.
The door, he was just directing you elsewhere.
And that was, you just remind me with the place A, ended up having to make people redundant like this year.
Oh, yeah.
Or last year, do you remember?
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, okay. So while I've been making progression here, I could have been really struggling or losing my job where I was going. And we'll get into it, how sometimes you praying for something, you may not get what you pray for, but we'll get into that. We'll get into that. But yeah, that's my testimony. That was a long one, I'm so sorry, but yeah.
Nah, no need to progress. It's a powerful, like, that's a full circle moment.
Yeah.
And it just goes back to like what I was saying, like, God doesn't see your he sees where you're going. Like, I need to make sure that, okay, you may hit barriers here, but that's to stop you from falling off the cliff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
oh my gosh, yeah.
Literally falling off the cliff. So it's incredible that we have authority over us that really sees beyond what we can see and ever see. Because as humans, we have that naivety. We think, oh, we know what's best. We know what we should be doing. I know if I go here, this is what's going to happen. But truth be told, you don't. And even says in the Bible, like, not to fret, not to have anxiety about anything, and to always pray about everything, because God literally hears you. He hears your prayers. And it's funny you say like Evan Almighty or even Bruce Almighty. You remember that scene in Bruce Almighty where Bruce is on the computer and he's got all the prayers, but from just basically from one little district, and there's like millions of prayers. It's like, you got to think God is working through all these prayers, and He's connecting them in ways in which we don't even see. Like, you're opening maybe an opening for someone else. The door being closed on you, maybe an opening for someone else. It's just like He works in ways that are just so fascinating. Like we can never understand, but always understanding that He always has our best interests at heart. But yeah, just with that in mind, it's just, as we've got here, just a reminder, like, prayer will align you with what is important according to His will. So as Tom was hinting to, like, our prayers are not always going to be answered in accordance to what we think they should be answered, like. And that sometimes when you pray for something, whether it be patience or some sort of characteristic like that, you're going to have to go through trials to develop that. Same way, like, if you go, okay, say for example, easy example, I want to get a six-pack. Say if that was something that you wanted to achieve, you're going to have to mash those hours in the gym for you to go through pain. Like, you have to do that to be able to come out the other side and be like, now I've got a ripped six-pack, right? And even certain verses that we have in the Bible, like iron sharpens iron, and the process of going through, and I've actually mentioned this in another podcast that I was on, when you think about how swords or weapons are forged, they have to be put under extreme heat.
Yeah.
They have to be white hot before they become solid. Become a weapon, right? And we got to think of that sometimes in terms of when we pray for something. Remember, you've prayed for this. It's gonna happen.
Yeah.
It may not happen as you want it to, but it will happen because when you've asked it, and it's obviously come from intentionally from your heart, from your spirit, something that's really there, and you believe in God, it will come to fruition. And it's just about trusting His will and understanding that His will may not align with yours, because His will is so much better. He knows what's best for us. But yeah, that's just a reminder for anyone that may be struggling at the moment and thinking that the prayers are not being answered. God has them in the bank. It's just about when He will deliver, and our understanding of time is different to His. And so just rest assured that if you truly believe and if you have faith in His word and have confidence in Him, He will come through. He come through all the time. He always does it. So just take encouragement from that, and remember that don't compare yourself to others. And what's prompted me to say that is, I remember you told me something like, there was a period where basically my prayers were just getting answered, and I remember you were like confused, but you were like, there was basically a part where you were just like I don't know, you said it joking, like, oh, like your prayers get answered. I've been praying. Like, when am I gonna revel in this goodness that you seem to be getting? And I know obviously you didn't mean like anything malicious about that. It's just literally just like God, like hear me out. Like where's mine?
I'm with Him. I'm here.
Literally, like where's mine? Like I've been helping this man. I've been uplifting him. Where's mine? And it's just like sometimes going back to the seasons we were talking about. Sometimes your seasons are are longer, shorter than others, and it's not about comparing. It's like you're on your own journey. You're on your own path, and you don't know what's coming around the next junction. So just be prepared and obviously keep yourself in prayer, because as you've seen from our testimonies, like, prayer is powerful.
So powerful.
And that's just one aspect. We just talk about work. Like prayer affects, and that's why I keep saying it's a way of life. Prayer affects so many different aspects of life that you may not even understand. It may heal relationships, it may heal trauma, it may build you up, it may break you down to build you up. Like there's so many things that prayer does to ensure that yourself as you are now is being grown. You're growing in your spirit, if you want to take it there.
I was gonna say, just in terms of like what you just said in terms of breaking you down to build you up, like God wouldn't want to, like, it's not to say God wants anything bad for you, but definitely in terms of like sometimes prayer may not change necessarily your circumstance, but it may change you. Sometimes it may be you that needs to change. So Lord's Prayer, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. The golden rule is to love God above all else. And loving God above all else, it means like God's your priority, like you're aligning to Him. And it's not a coincidence that one of the first few things is like your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is. Like God's will is the priority. And there's a verse in the Bible that says God will give you the desires of your heart. So one of my favorite words, caveat to that, is He'll give you the desires of your heart, but it has to be in line with His desires for you. It has to be in line with you putting God first. It has to be in line of wanting His will to be done here as it is in heaven, that type of thing. So sometimes you may pray for something, and you can pray and you can pray and you can pray. There's two ways that you can look at it. You can pray and pray and pray and think, this isn't being answered, I don't believe in God anymore, or this isn't being answered, God's not listening to me, Or you can look at it as like, okay, why is this prayer not being answered? So the next thing you need to do now is pray for understanding, like, God, show me why you're not answering this, why is this not working for me? And then God will reveal that to you. Like, if your genuine approach is to understand God and understands God's will and understand the goodness God wants for you, you will realize that His plan will far supersede what you may want. Like, for example, a 5-bedroom house. And you'll be praying for God, or praying. The only things that come into your budget are 3-bedroom houses. Like, God, I don't want 3 bedrooms. I want 5. And it's not happening. It's not happening for you. None of the people who've got these 5 bedrooms are accepting your offers. So essentially, you look back and you think, okay, fine, God, I didn't want a 5-bedroom, but I'm going to go for this 3 eventually. mortgage rates, they've introduced a double bedroom tax. So for every bedroom that you have in your house, it's double the kind of increase, whatever. This is just an example.
Yeah.
And it's done in a way that your 3 bedrooms is what you can afford at that time. If you'd gone into that 5 bedroom, you would have had to sell, or you couldn't afford it, or you would have gone bankrupt. So you never know what like God is doing for you. Or it could be a case of patience, but actually God is going to answer that prayer. But this is why you have to ask God. Maybe that him understanding him is that he's saying you just need to wait. It's not your time yet. You need to be patient, you need to wait. And that's cool. It's kind of like Elijah and I, like we explained, we're living in our family home at my mum's at the moment because like we were thinking of renting. Renting is an absolute nightmare at the moment. House prices are crazy at the moment. Like we're sorting ourselves out. And we keep looking on right. We're like, oh, this would be nice. We tried to rent somewhere. We were so close. It was like somewhere that was like more or less within our budget. Like we would have been able to be fine. And we couldn't get it. We're like, oh, like it would have been good. And then it was the other day, I can't remember what it was, but I just said to Elijah, I think God's putting us in a situation where, and it's a message I keep getting of like we spoke about seasons, but appreciating where you are now. There was it's one of the preachers, she has blonde hair, black woman, blonde highlights. She's usually short, American.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
I think it was her. I keep coming across her on YouTube.
Is her name Nora?
It's her or someone else. But I think it's Nora. It might be.
The one that
I think it's her. Yeah. Well, how like you always want the next thing. It's always like, so you get married, now you want a house. You've got a house, now you want children. You've got children, now you want that kind of the children to do their own thing. They're doing their own thing, you want the children back, because you're like, it's always the next thing that you want. And I was thinking, actually, and there was someone else had said something like, I kept coming across this thing like living in the present, like now's all we have.
As it says in the Bible, be still.
Be still, yeah. So I was just thinking, like, do you know what? We're in a season, like, for me, I'll never get this time to be with my mum all the time like this again, or my brothers. Like, I'm never going to have this time back with my kind of nuclear family. Like, once we move out, like, it's going to be visiting my mum, like, at least hopefully once a week. Do you know what I mean? We're never going to get this opportunity. Like the holidays we've been on is partially been because although we're paying contributions towards my mum, like rent towards my mum, it's nowhere near the amount that we'll ever pay again until we're free from mortgage. Like, so for me, it's a case of we're praying to God. We want this financial breakthrough. We want to be able to move out. We want this and other. But actually, God's put us in this season for a reason, and it's actually just understanding that and developing whatever it is we need to develop before He opens the door for the next season. So for me, I say we just need to, I believe we need to keep praying on the house, like just keep that community going, like this is what we want, like God see our hearts, but also be thankful for the position we're in as well, and not be so focused on having our own place that we miss the blessings we're experiencing at the moment, and actually the privilege we have, to be fair, because there are going to be so many people who would probably want to have this grace, but like we could easily be homeless if it wasn't for the fact we had a loving family who'd be like, yeah, you can like stay with us, or we could be living in some sort of den. Do you know what I mean? Like our dynamic where we are at the moment, we've got a really our own space, which is really lovely and really like to ourselves. Yeah, it has some drawbacks, but it's like we can't really complain.
No, we can't. We shouldn't. And in all things, just give praise, you know, because like you said, it could be worse.
Yeah.
And it's just appreciate where we are right now. And something I came across yesterday when I was scrolling through Instagram, because most of my feed is just basically Bible stuff now. I've intentionally done it that way. But it was basically these two men having a conversation. I'm not sure if they are actually pastors or whatever they are, but they were having a conversation about human nature and how we're now in a period where mankind are all about the hustle, you know, making sure they're working towards the next thing, as you're talking about, which is a never-ending cycle. And don't get me wrong, it's good to have that mentality in terms of wanting to get stuff, or, you know, working hard. Things, you know, it says to work hard and stuff like that. But I think it's become a real, I guess, is it epidemic, if you want to call it that, with that hustle culture. And this man, as he's talking about hustle culture, the other man is like, what happens if you do nothing though? And why are humans so afraid to do nothing? And the man keeps talking about hustling culture, and then he stops and he's like, basically, I don't really know, like, and he's like, I'll tell you what it is. It's because if humans attribute themselves to that nothingness, so if you do nothing, you become nothing. And that's not true. Because there are moments where you can do nothing, when you're supposed to do nothing, when you're supposed to stand still, as it says in the Bible. And it got me thinking in terms of like, it's okay, like to stay still. It's okay to be in this period, in this season. And doing nothing doesn't mean literally doing nothing. It means, as we are, just appreciating where you are now. Take a step back, appreciate your present, and appreciate where you are now, because if you don't take a moment to stop, stand still, you're going to miss out whatever it is that's supposed to be known to you in that period, in that season. And so that's really important to recognize in times of prayer. When you pray something, it may not happen straight away, but then you have that literally that light bulb moment. You think, oh my word, like, God, you've literally put this in my lap. Like, I asked for this, I prayed for this, and here we are. And it's like, then you have to really appreciate, okay, this is real. Like, these prayers, they have so much power. There's power in the tongue in terms of the things you say come to fruition if you truly do align it to God's will. But yeah, that's just kind of like my little caveat on that. Because yeah, it's really important just to recognize that, yeah, as you said, Tom, like, our will, it's not our will, it's his will. And really trusting him to take the will and leading us to where we're supposed to be. But yeah,
I think that's that's really good. So yeah, so don't be discouraged if you do pray and you're not seeing the expected result from your prayer. Look at what is happening, and maybe take time to genuinely develop that relationship with God.
Talking about relationships with God, because like in terms of relationships with God, and obviously prayer, and as I said at the beginning, like, prayer was something to me that was very alien. I was like, ugh, it's like very cringe. But pray in any capacity that you can. Prayer doesn't literally, you don't have to be on your knees like, God, like, I need you. Like, you don't have, it doesn't have to be like that. As we looked at in the last week when we looked at the Christian culture cards, it asks for preference in terms of what's your style of preference: quiet, loud, together, alone, long, short. Prayer is, just take it as a communication that you have towards God, and as you do with people, communicate in different ways, and so treat it that way. You can communicate with God. God is always listening. God is always there. So communicate where you can. And again, something I scrolled on Instagram where a preacher's talking about prayer, and how if you look at all the figures or important figures that talk about prayer and how do we pray, they literally say pray, which I know sounds redundant, because it's like, if I'm asking you to do something, you give me, it's like when you give a definition of something and use the word in the definition. But essentially, yeah, it wouldn't make you look at me sideways like, that's not you explaining it, or at least telling me how to do it. But it makes sense, because you got to start somewhere, right? And so by that, with that in mind, pray however you can. So if that's the case, that you're walking down the street and you just pray like, God, I need help, that's you praying. Or I don't know, before you go to bed, when you're fighting sleep and you're like, God, like, thank you for the day, whatever it is, like, that's you praying. Or I don't know, you just, something prompts you during your time when you're eating your food and you just think in your head and you're like, and you pray. Like, there's different ways in which you can, and it's one of those things that the more you do it, the less cringe you'll get, the more comfortable you get with it, the more equipped you become with the words that you use. Especially if you're meditating on the word as well, there'll be things that will filter into your brain or into your spirit that will come out when you pray. And also pray with others as well, which again is a daunting thing to do, but I know for me, when I started praying with Tonga and she kind of gave me a safe space to pray, it became a lot easier to kind of just feel comfortable praying out loud. And don't get me wrong, it may take a while, because it is difficult. And even now in church, I'm not always the first to be like praying out loud. There's literally people in the church that pray loud in community, but it's not always my preference to do so. But
you're not probably drawn to it.
Yeah, I'm not drawn to it, but I have my own relationship with prayer, just as I have my own relationship with God. And you've got to treat it that way. It's your own relationship with God, but make sure you are having that relationship with God by talking to him, because it's for your benefit. Though it glorifies him, and though he he finds it pleasing, you have to remember it's like it's a synergy. It works back and forth. Like,
sorry, we've had to change cameras. You probably noticed a difference. Can only apologise. But yeah, I think that's our cue to kind of start bringing it to a close. One thing I did really want to speak to people who struggle with prayer, especially those who may believe in God, believe in Jesus, and understand that we are meant to pray. And I just want to reach out to whoever's listening to this who may need to hear this in terms of so for me, I definitely went through a phase. I know Elijah's saying that I gave him that safe space to be able to pray out loud and to have that relationship with prayer. But before I was in that position, I was in a position where I basically was very unsteady in my prayer life. So the first thing was, I went through a phase of absolutely not talking to God, really. Like, I did not pray. And it's because I was doing a lot of things that didn't really align with being a Christian, or did a lot of things that I knew in my heart of hearts, in my conscience, in my spirit, that I should not have been doing. I had that guilt there of like, oh, I can't talk to God because I'm living this lifestyle and I know the Bible says I shouldn't do this. I know God wouldn't approve. So I just didn't talk to God. I believed in God. I believed in Jesus. I believed that being a Christian was right in terms of like genuinely following Christ, like not all the interpretations that humans have put on it. But I knew in my spirit that I wasn't aligned with the calling of God in my life. So I didn't talk to him. And then I got to a place of, it must have been over time, like, you know, God really chases you down. He does. And I think once you're a child of God generally, and once your spirit has been, you're alive in the spirit, you're gonna have that connection. Like, unless you completely denounce everything, you're gonna have that connection. And the best way I can explain it is, it's kind of like most people who have parents will be able to identify with this. There's going to be a way your parents raise you. There's going to be a way that they expect you to behave, which you may not do when they're not around. So, best example, I'm going to have an honesty moment with you guys. So, my mum, very strong Christian woman. She doesn't drink at all. I have. I'm usually very sensible with my drinking. Like, I'm not a rowdy drinker or anything. No. I did have one night where, let's just say, she wouldn't have been the proudest. I'm gonna go into details. Nothing that was like immoral. I didn't do anything immoral, but I behaved in a way which I think a few months later she was just like, oh, people who let themselves get to that state, it's so embarrassing. And I was like, yeah, it's bad, isn't it? I was like, yeah. So for me, that's my mum being very adamant about a behaviour that she did not agree with. She does not rate, no respect for it. Me as a daughter had fallen just once in my life, in my 29 years of life. That was the one time I let myself get to that state. I didn't come back after, and I know my mum wouldn't have approved of getting to such a state, but I didn't come back from that trip and think, I can't talk to my mum now. That would be crazy. No one goes out, behaves in a way their parents don't approve of, and because of that guilt, just stop talking. I mean, maybe there's some people, but generally, you know that like you may behave a certain way that your parents may not approve of, but you know your parents love you enough that they love you. You can talk to them. I can go back after a messy night. I can be at home with a hangover, eating my mum's good food, and know that she still loves me. I can do certain things that she may not approve of, and it may encourage me not to do it long-term wise. Like, I've not had a night like that since. I hadn't had a night like that before, and it wasn't even my mum who had to tell me anything. I just knew in myself, like, I'm not that person. Like, that doesn't need to happen. I don't even know how I got there. But that's the same thing with God. Like, if I know that my mum may not agree with a certain way of life, but I can still go and talk to her, how much more so can I speak to God despite my life? And how much more so that God already knows all the things I'm doing. Like, my mum didn't know. Like, I am a good daughter. I just want to disclaimer. I'm not that wild. But she doesn't know all the mistakes I've made. But I still know that I can go to her. I don't feel guilt, like overwhelming, bearing guilt of like, oh, she doesn't know everything, because I understand that I'm a human being. I understand that I'm going to make mistakes. I understand I have to go through my learning curves. and it's like there's some things that I've been exposed to my mum and she has still loved me. How much more so God is with you in every single moment, every mistake you've made, he's already aware of it. So the only person restricting that relationship at the end of the day is you, because God already knew what you did. He already knows what you're about to do next. He already knows the regret you may be living with, and it's not God he's putting on you. He wants you to go to him and be like, have that relationship so that he can support you, essentially. So for me, it was like, number one, this is why the devil's a liar, because why was I feeling guilt and shame over something that God, it's not that he doesn't want me to feel guilt and shame of, because it's already covered. He wants me to go to him and do better and be better. So that guilt wasn't from God, it was just from me. It was just from me, because like realistically looking back, like God was with me in every single mistake I was making. It wasn't like it was a big secret, like if I go to God and talk about it, he's gonna be really disappointed. He knew there was nothing I could have told him that would have exposed him to me being a wild child. Again, I wasn't a wild child, I'm exaggerating.
It was one night.
But it's like there was a period of time, and in hindsight, this is why I know, like, there was something working against me, because in hindsight I didn't ever do anything that was like any other person would really look at me and be like, oh Tomo, you were really bad for that. Like, there was no reason for me to not talk to God.
No.
It was genuinely just like a lie I'd accepted that had been spun in my ear from a certain serpent. Exactly. So in hindsight, number one, so that's one thing I want to say. If you are a Christian, you're struggling with your prayer life, and it is because maybe you feel like you're not living in a way that you think God would approve of, God already knows. He already knows the way you're living. He already knows the mistake you may feel you made last night, last week, 3 weeks ago. Like, God was there when it happened. He's not surprised by anything. Like, you going to him and saying, I did this, isn't going to shock him.
No.
I promise you.
No.
It's not going to come as a surprise. It's not going to make him gasp. It's not going to make him shook. There's nothing that can shake him. He already knows. He knows the next mistake you're going to make, and he still loves you. So the only, and this is like, how do I put it? Not to scare people off who may not be Christian, but how do I put it? The reason,
don't think because he knows what it is.
No, I was gonna say the thing stopping you from talking to God isn't God.
No.
That's where I'm gonna put it. If you understand, thank you. You were so on the same level as me. The thing stopping you from talking to God isn't God. Take from that what you will. I think whoever needs to hear it the way that it needs to be heard will hear it.
It may come from your neck, but
the thing stopping you from talking to God isn't God. Understand that, and you have to ask yourself, what is going to happen if I do talk to God? And I promise you, it's only a good thing. What's stopping you doesn't want you to access that good thing. Okay, so just ponder that. I'm not going to be here to force anyone to pray, because that is your relationship with God. That's your relationship, that's your life. But there may be one person listening to this who needs to hear this. Whatever's stopping you from talking to God, you may think that you are so far from, you know, the what would Jesus do bracelets? You may think you've done the absolute opposite of everything Jesus would have done. God still wants you to talk to him. And more than anything, the other reason, it may be pride and ego, the other thing that's stopping you from talking to God is you accepting that actually you've not been living a certain way. Again, kill that pride, kill that ego, because again, that's going to stop it. That's also coming from whatever wants you to not talk to God. But once you kill that pride and ego, you will see that, like, God will open doors. I'm not talking physically, I'm talking like in terms of your life, emotional doors. He may open kind of maturity doors that that are being blocked because you haven't gone to him yet, when you feel like, I know that you should. So that's one thing in terms of don't turn your back on God, because God isn't turning his back on you. And the other thing, so another thing that I used to do, so once I started talking to God and praying to God, I used to always pray in my head. Like, even when I was by myself, I would always pray in my head. I wouldn't pray out loud, because I had this fear that if I asked God for something, or I wanted him to do something, that if I prayed out loud, the devil will hear my prayer and send something to block it, or intercept it. And I can't remember the moment, but there was a moment where, I don't know if it was the Spirit who told it to me, but essentially kind of like,
are you okay? What's wrong with you?
You think the devil can stop God? Like you asking God for something, the devil can never stop God from enacting what is meant for you in your life. He will try, but God will always
succeed.
God will always oversucceed. As long as you put your trust in God, there's nothing the devil can do that can bring you down. But that comes with prayer, and it's kind of like, just to remember that, and to remember that prayer is relationship. Like, I can't have a relationship with Elijah and not talk to him. I can't get to know who he is as a person. I can't, sorry, there's just so much. Another thing is, like, how do you know it's God's voice? So one thing that got told to me, so I remember there was a period of time where I was around people who seemed to have this amazing relationship with God, where supernatural things were happening in their lives. And I'm like, God's telling me this and God's telling me that. And this was when I was younger, like, and I say younger, it was like maybe early 20s. And someone was like, the best way to know God's voice is to read the Bible. And I'm like, I ain't doing that. Have you seen how big that book is? I was like, haha, because I've now read the Bible back to front. But the reason they said it is because if I'm in a room and I hear people talking in the room next door, without seeing who's in the room next door, I'll be able to distinguish Elijah's voice. Yeah. I know which voice is Elijah's, and I know to go towards his voice. I'll be like, that's Elijah's voice. I can go to it. I hear what he's saying. I only know Elijah's voice because I spend time with him. I only know what he sounds like because I speak with him. I know what the phrases are that he uses. I know his tone. I know, like, all of that, everything that he uses. The only reason I may be able to look through letters and know that's Elijah's writing is because I read his writing. If he sends me a text, I may know this is Elijah's text because of the way he types, type of thing. I can only know these things from spending time with him. The reason that you need to spend time in the Word is because when it comes to prayer, like, this is, and I'm not saying, like, especially if you're like maybe a new Christian or a Christian who's trying to come back to God, this sounds like, so do it like Elijah said, do what you can and build on that. But the reason why reading the Bible is so important in terms of understanding God's voice is because sometimes you may pray for something and not know if it's the right thing to pray. The best way to have that confirmation is to look in the Word. It says that heaven and earth will pass away, but the Word will never pass away. It says specifically in the Bible, don't add, don't take away, don't change anything in it, because the Word is like inspired by God. It's God's writing. It's what God wanted to communicate to us. So if you're praying for something and you're like, I'm unsure of this, or someone comes to you and says, oh, God told me this, the best thing you can do is go read the Bible and see if it aligns with what is in the Bible. If it's not in line with what God has put in the Bible, or it's not something that God has even put in your heart first, God's not going to tell someone else something before he tells you. You'd have at least had an inkling, and someone else should come and confirm it to you. Unless it's like maybe a prophet. Yeah. And I know it's hard to know who a prophet is and who isn't. But like, the best way to know if it's God talking to you is to spend time with him through the Word, through prayer. So the more you spend time with him, the more you'll know he's talking to you. You know what it sounds like. For me, I know more and more what God feels like to me, because there's certain things that cues that I pick up on, and then certain things follow after that. And now even in dreams, like, I don't know if I've gone into it in the past, but there's certain dreams that I have, and then I'll act on it, and there'll be a confirmation like, oh my gosh, okay, that was interesting. But I just wanted to really encourage new Christians or Christians who are struggling with that aspect. Like, don't feel guilt or shame if you've not been praying to God recently. That's not God that's making you feel that way. And see it as a relationship. God wants a relationship with you. He doesn't need you to be doing all the works and wonders that are in the Bible. He needs you to depend on him, to go to him, to be his child, to access and accept his grace, you know. So do you like what I did? A full circle. We love a full circle. But I just wanted to be encouraged, and I want to say that, like, and be honest, like, I was that person, you know. I've gone through it, so I know. That's why I want to encourage and not put that shame on him. We've spoken about prayer, the power of prayer, but also it can be daunting if you don't do it, or you haven't done it, or you've run away from it. So whoever needs to hear this, I hope it gets to you. And
I think with that in mind, and as we always do each episode, if anyone has any prayer requests, and we don't say it lightly, because as you probably see from this episode, we really do believe in the power of prayer. Please bring it to us. As we mentioned at the beginning, we have a Q&A. We're on Instagram or YouTube. just drop us a message on Instagram, and we'll pray over you, because there's real power in prayer. And it says in the Bible, I think it's in First Thessalonians.
Oh, did you want that?
Yeah, I can't remember.
We had some verses for you guys. Yeah.
To pray incessantly. Is that a word? I think it was.
If it is, it might be. He said something else today. But
Yeah, the word was not incessantly, but yeah, incessantly means non-stop, right?
What are you reading?
It doesn't say it, but I'm just thinking the word
What did you say again?
incessantly.
I'm thinking of something completely different. It might be.
I know there's a word that's in it that doesn't sound right, but basically it says in 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 17 to be unceasing in prayer, and this is from the Amplified version, but praying perseveringly. Got there in the end. If you had heard how the way I was trying to say it before,
I was like, I don't think God wants us
you would
to do
log off,
that.
right? You would not even. But yeah, and as it says in Matthew 21 verse 22, again from the Amplified version, it says, and whatever you ask for in prayer, having faith and really believing, you will receive. So just going back to what we said about, you have to really understand your heart posture. Do you believe? And is that prayer something that
You just revealed something to me. And really believing. I always took it as like, oh, I believe this can happen. Like, I can see this situation happening.
No.
But as in, like, genuinely, like, is this the right thing? Like, do you
Yeah.
believe that this is crazy?
Revelations for everyone.
Revelation.
But
Oh
yeah,
man, that's just completely changed everything. I genuinely thought it was like, oh yeah, I believe this. I believe God can do this. And to be fair, God can do it. But
everything, but
is it truly for you to access this? Ooh.
yeah, so assess your heart posture. What is it that your heart, well, I know the heart lies, but I think it means beyond that. As in, is it something
like
that
your soul, your
spirit is
Yeah.
actually saying this is right? If there's any inkling of you that knows maybe, you know, that's a prayer that isn't really a prayer that I need, then, you know, void it. It doesn't need to happen. But as I hinted to, in terms of do not fret or have an anxiety, it speaks in Philippians 4 verse 6. Do not fret or have any anxiety about anything, but in every circumstance and in everything, by prayer and petition, definite requests, with thanksgiving, continue to make your wants known to God. So God hears, as I said, He's constantly listening. He wants you to pray because that's your communication with Him. Remember to assess your heart posture and pray and ask for things from Him because He wants to do that for you. But remember as well, as we said, that those prayers, I can't get all the words mixed up, but those prayers may not come to fruition when you want them to or how you want them to, because it's His will. So these are all sort of things to remember. But yeah, just as we've mentioned, just pray as you can, and take encouragement from what we said in terms of there's so much power in prayer. And if you don't know how to pray, it says how to pray in Matthew 6 verse 9 to 13, which is the Lord's Prayer, as we said. So our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen. So
is that last part? I don't know if it is. I don't know if that's like a Catholic thing.
that might be from my Catholic roots.
Yeah, I need to double check because the last time I read that verse, I noticed that part wasn't actually.
Yeah, but yeah, read on that. And just saying it, that came to memory over repetition. Just keep saying it and saying it. I normally said it before for bedtime. If I wasn't in the way of like saying a prayer that was really personal to me, I would say that because it literally says that in Matthew 6 verse 9 to 13. Covers everything. But remember, again, it's His will. His will be done. And remember that you're doing it. It's His glory, glorification. That is at the end of the day. But yeah, this episode was just on the importance of the power of prayer. And I'll just re-emphasize again, if there are any prayer requests, please send them our way. If you've got any questions, again, send them our way. But I think just in light of what Lizzie encouraged us to do, I'm gonna pray us out.
Okay.
Because I think it's just a good habit to have, and whoever's listening, let this be a prayer that is for you as well.
Mm.
And it also says in the Bible to pray in numbers, that there's a real strength in praying in numbers as well. So I'm just going to take this moment to pray. And if you've reached the end, this is, I guess, the blessing we're going to give to you. Some says, but obviously from God. We're going to just speak this prayer that's come to me now. So Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this time, Lord. We thank you for whoever's listening, Lord, or watching Tea Time Podcast. We ask that whatever it is that may be heavy on their heart, or anything that they may need, Lord, that you be there to provide it for them. As it says in the Bible, Lord, that we should come to you with all our requests, Lord, and remember to assess our heart posture, Lord. So I just pray that whoever's at the end of this video or podcast, Lord, that they receive this word that's been passed through us to them, Lord. And I just pray that if there's anything that they may need help with, they're struggling with, or need guidance with, Lord, that they come to you, or at least come to us, so they can have a conversation with us, because we're always here to kind of have those conversations, Lord. So again, we just thank you for this time that we've had, Lord, and we pray that for those that are listening, Lord, that it resonates with them, and that they continue to grow in their spirit, Lord. Most importantly, that they grow in their spirit, and they grow their relationship with you, and hopefully understand the power of prayer and develop their own personal prayer relationship with you, Heavenly Father. So again, we just thank you, and we thank them for listening to us as we close off this podcast. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So yeah, just that in itself, that prayer, that would have taken me ages back in the day to be able to formulate a prayer like that. But there is that saying, practice makes perfect,
or makes better. You don't have to be perfect. Practice makes better, you know. So yeah, just pray. It could be a few words. Sometimes I pray like, oh God, I don't know what to pray about, but you see my heart.
Exactly.
You know, until you can build up that need and that want, and to go to Him. But yeah, thank you for listening today, guys. We hope you've enjoyed. I think we're gonna have to accept, because there's like such a big area that we're covering, that
we go through topics that are huge.
And there's so much more, like we can only say so much, like obviously we've come up to like an hour and a half now again, but it's just, there's so much that can be said about prayer, and I'd encourage anyone, like, don't just take everything from us, like do your research, spend your time, talk to people, send us, like we said, questions and answers, that type of thing, and we can elaborate on it. We won't know if there's anything that we need to clarify unless someone asks or puts it to us. But yeah, we hope it spoke to the right people. We hope it made sense as well.
But yeah, thank you for tuning in to episode 6, which is the power of prayer. And we just wish you blessings, good fortune throughout your week. And hopefully, by the grace of God, we'll be here next week.
Amen.
To go through the next topic, which we haven't decided at the moment. But if there is any topics that you want us to cover as well, please let us know, and we can do that. But yeah, thank you for listening. We're going to call it.